This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. Very important to keep an eye on this story in regards to the taxpayer-funded ID program that is being rolled out this summer. And the initial rollout will consist of 10,000 cards. It's important to note because if you read between the fine lines, you can see where this is headed with digital ID. Now, the main story here that they want you to focus on is that your tax money is funding an ID program for illegal immigrants, which again will allow illegal immigrants to vote in a fictional election. That's what they're getting conservatives riled up about, but they're not reading between the fine lines, because what is the fine print showing us here? It's showing us that ICE previously announced that the ID will have a photograph and biographic identifiers and cutting-edge security features. So for those of you that don't know what that means, let me make it clear. When you see the word biographic identifiers, it means that biometric identifiers are often categorized as physiological characteristics which are related to the shape of the body. Examples include, but are not limited to, fingerprint, palm and veins, facial recognition, DNA, palm print, hand geometry, iris recognition, retina and or scent, voice, shape of ears, and gait. They're preparing you for the digital ID. So the first thing we'll likely see is this physical ID that they roll out. They're going to tell us, well, the physical ID is out there. Okay, they're trying to get people the right to vote. And it's going to eventually become, we need a digital ID. This has to be digital. So while they'll be using biometric data the first time around, you could bet your bottom dollar that that digital ID will not come until Trump is in office for the immigrants and then eventually for all citizens when Trump is in office, because they're going to tell you that even though these have biometric data, they're still physical IDs, and the physical IDs are still being manipulated. That immigrants are manipulating the physical ID, the immigrants are passing it around, until we get to a point where they say this has to be digital. There can't be any fudging, there can't be any of this problem, reaction, solutions. The whole purpose of the border isn't about voting. Okay, your vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter who anybody votes for. It doesn't count. It's predetermined. The election is predetermined. It's the illusion of freedom that you're holding on to, which is preventing you from actually starting a revolution against a small group of tyrants who have gained control over your mind. Okay? So if you look closely, before I read you what this story details, if you look closely at the ID, you'll notice that there's actually one of those barcodes, you know, those QR codes in the top right corner. That's the beginning of this, the QR code. You are the QR code. You may have seen a lot of the videos that I've done where I've shown you people having it tattooed on their body. Okay, you can find people who have QR codes tattooed on their body that are scannable. Eventually, you are this QR code, right? Remember in the 80s and 90s, people talking about the mark of the beast. If you don't remember, people back then thought it was literally just a barcode that was on a product, right? And they were saying eventually you'll be the product. We just hadn't gotten to that point yet because the technology hadn't become so something some people depended on so much so that they literally allow things to turn into a QR code in itself, right? Now you go to the store, right? You go to a restaurant. What do you see? Go to the restaurant. Well, if you want to look at the menu, we're not going to give you a physical one. You got to do it through a QR code. Eventually, you're the QR code that's scanned through biometrics, through your DNA. Okay, the same way that you scan a menu at a restaurant, I'm sure some of you have seen it. If you haven't, you know, look at like Chili's or some of these places. You go there, they don't give you a physical ID. They have a little thing on the table. You scan with your phone. It pulls up a menu on your phone, right? You'll be having this embedded in you. When your genetic code is altered, you'll be walking in and out of stores and you'll be scanned in this way. And you'll only be allowed in these places if you have that mark inside of your body. So the QR code is important to note on these ID cards, okay? So the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the ICE, is eyeing a summer rollout for a controversial ID card pilot program for illegal immigrants being released into the U.S., and the agency hopes it will modernize the documentation process for removal proceedings. The ICE Secure Docket Card program was first reported in 2022, and Fox obtained images of the card last year. Now, ICE is planning a limited rollout of the program. ICE confirmed to Fox News Digital this week the pilot program is expected to commence this summer with the distribution of 10,000 cards. While the agency stressed that plans are pre-decisional and still subject to change, it is expected the cards will be issued in 3 or 4 locations in the U.S. The agency said the program will modernize documentation provided to some non-citizens, but stressed it would not be an official form for federal ID. While the specifics of the card and pilot are under development, it's important to note the secure card will not be an official form of federal identification. The secure card will indicate it is for use by DHS agencies and would be provided only after national security background checks have been performed. When illegal immigrants cross the border and are released into the interior, they are often given a number of paper documents depending on their status and situation. ICE says that such documents pose a security risk and can be lost and degraded, and the new program will make the agency more efficient. It would also allow for easier verification of identity through DHS systems. Moving to a secure card will save the agency millions, free up resources, and ensure information is quickly accessible to DHS officials while reducing the agency's backlog. For provisionally released non-citizens, the digital modernization will provide ongoing access to important immigration documents through the secure card and connected portal. And again, eventually you'll be connected to this portal. But the move is expected to face opposition from some Republicans and conservatives who have expressed broader concerns about the regularization of the release of illegal immigrants, which they have described as an invasion orchestrated by the federal government. Just in time for the election, the Biden administration is quietly legitimizing a government-sanctioned invasion of our nation, says one politician. Listen. This invasion is allowed by the Republicans and the Democrats, and this is the problem. The Republicans are falling for this thing, hook, line, and sinker. Not saying that it's not happening. I'm saying that the Republicans are in on it, which is why they're doing nothing about it. All they do is pretend to you that they care and are concerned by gaslighting you every day, saying that they're trying to do something about it when they can do something about it. What they want ultimately is a digital ID. This is something they need on the Democratic side and the Republican side. Republicans will go along with this if it means that in Republican states eventually that they'll be using biometric data and digital IDs to make sure there's no illegal immigrants in the states. That's what we're headed towards. This isn't about them caring at all, and it certainly isn't about them actually trying to prevent illegals from crossing the border, and it most definitely has nothing to do with your vote. People need to get it through their heads. Your vote doesn't count. What keeps you enslaved is thinking that your vote is what's going to free you from this nightmare, instead of an actual revolution, which is the only thing that could save us from this nightmare. You thinking that going to a ballot box and going and voting, and them actually counting on them to count every single vote the correct way is going to save you, keeps them empowered. And they want you to believe this illusion of the vote. Now, we know out of this year's election, the one guarantee is that whatever side is selected, which is likely looking like Trump, whichever side they select as the winner, okay, the other side is going to believe the election is rigged. It'll work both ways. There's no chance that anyone's going to believe that Biden actually wins an election. And Democrats, all they need to be told is that there's collusion from Russia or whoever else on the outside, and they'll believe that story and that the Republicans rigged the election. That's what's coming out of this. The digital ID is the answer to the problem. The digital ID will ensure that there's no more election interference. The digital ID will ensure that nobody's illegally crossing the border. They want this and have to have this. They need to convince both sides of it, okay? This is going to be biometric data. When you hear them use the term, well, it's a physical ID, but it's also going to have a QR code on it, and it's also going to have biographic identifiers. Understand that there's going to be stories that come out during this that say somehow illegals are still getting in with this card even in place because the Biden administration is allowing them to legally get in. The conservatives are the ones who are going to be clamoring for the biometric data. The conservatives are going to be the ones who are begging for it because they're going to say, look, they gave the ID card out, and look at the immigrants and look at the Democrats allowing them still to invade. They're not following this problem. The only thing that would actually work, or the only thing that's actually working, because you'll hear stories about illegals getting caught via the biometric data. Just like the subway stories I've been covering. Oh, all of a sudden the subways are going to be safe because there's going to be biometric facial recognition, etc. In the subways, now all of a sudden everything's solved, right? Problem, reaction, solution. The same thing will be used with this. They will bait you to death with story after story after story. They will gaslight you to death with story after story after story about how they're still getting in, but the one thing that's preventing it, the one thing that's getting them caught is the biometric data, and that we need all illegals to have biometric data. Then it filters down to us. And keep in mind other stories out there right now about the real ID. Remember, the real ID starting in 2025. The TSA is not going to let you through security checkpoints at any airport without the real ID. It's all transitioning you to be completely digital, okay? Yes, the real ID is not the digital ID yet, but it's one step closer to it. It's one step closer to, well, now eventually you could have your passport in your digital ID. You can't travel unless you have the magic potion. All these other things that are going to tie into the digital ID. The story about the migrants, again, look at how they word this. Taxpayer-funded ID program, okay? The first thing you think of when you see that is, why am I funding this? This makes people angrier and angrier, right? More likely to turn on the government, which is what they want you to do because they want the conservatives to go with the conservative party, who's going to break free from the federal government at some point, okay? And the second thing is that this ID that we're paying for is going to hopefully keep illegal immigrants out. And then you're going to find out that it's not keeping them out except for the biometrical aspect of it. That part will work. They'll tell you that, well, if they use the biometrical part, if they use the QR code, then they've been able to find these people and get them out. But other people have been able to fidget with this and they've been able to fudge the data on it. This is nothing more than getting you prepared for a digital ID. Watch how this story develops in the upcoming months this summer in 2024 and what it leads to with Trump and the digital ID. Remember, digital ID with Trump, freedom cities with Trump. It's the same thing with a different name. Just like how we're seeing global communism taking over. It looks different in different countries, but it's the same exact thing. It's woke here in America. Okay, it's not woke in other countries. It's woke here in America. It's modern day communism, which is modern day slavery. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.